The man in the black shirt didn't speak. He stood still, hands behind his back, watching a group of elite operatives go through live sparring drills inside a military training dome just outside Nevada's Redline combat facility. Jason Statham was there as a courtesy guest. At least, that's what they told him. The truth, he was being tested, quietly, indirectly. And the one leading that test, Chief Petty Officer Kyle Maddox, lean, loud, metal-plated Navy SEAL, warzone legend, and self-declared alpha of the program. He walked circles around his trainees, barking orders and dropping insults like grenades. But the moment he spotted Jason standing beside the ring, silent and unshaken, his tone changed. It got playful. He asked the room who let the Hollywood stuntman on his training grounds. He asked if Jason wanted a selfie on the pull-up bar. He told his recruits they were about to see what TV muscle looks like up close. The room laughed. Not all of them, just the ones who hadn't seen real fear before. Jason didn't smile. He didn't blink. He didn't respond. Because Kyle wasn't mocking a celebrity. He was mocking a ghost he didn't know existed. And the man he was taunting had once trained people like Kyle back when Kyle still thought boot camp was the peak of discipline. 10 minutes later, the joke kept building. Kyle clapped his hands, told his recruits they'd do a demonstration. A close-quarters scenario, old man versus the real thing. He didn't ask Jason. He just waved him into the circle. Jason stepped in, calm, measured. Kyle stripped off his tactical shirt, revealing inked arms, a carved chest, and the kind of confidence that came from surviving firefights most people couldn't imagine. He didn't see Jason as a threat. He saw him as a warm-up. The trainees circled, cameras in hand. Some were streaming. Others just wanted proof for the barracks. Kyle paced like a shark. He told Jason the rules. No headshots, no real strikes, just contact, just form. Jason didn't respond. So Kyle struck first, fast. He came in low with a sweeping inside kick meant to trip and embarrass. Jason pivoted. Didn't block, didn't parry. He let the kick miss by an inch. Then he took a step forward, just one. Kyle grinned. Threw a combo jab, cross, elbow feint. Jason didn't move his feet, he just tilted. Let every strike graze air. Then, he tapped Kyle on the sternum with 2 fingers, not hard. Just firm. Kyle stumbled, laughed it off, claimed it was a lucky poke. But something in his smile changed. The crowd noticed it. They stopped laughing, because Jason hadn't thrown a punch. He hadn't even entered a stance. And yet Kyle's body had shifted like it had been reset. What Kyle didn't know was this. Jason had once been flown into conflict zones not as a soldier, but as a counter-instructional advisor, the man who taught men how to win fights that weren't supposed to be won. He was never given a call sign, just a code name, Chisel. Because he broke down egos one movement at a time. Kyle's former CO had warned him once in a bar in Kandahar that there were 3 men in this world you don't spar with unless you want to question your own training. Jason was one of them. And now, Kyle was about to find out why. Kyle faked a grin and went again, harder this time. He came in with a heavy elbow-to-clinch transition, real military stuff. Fast, rough, dominant. Jason spun out of it with surgical precision, turned Kyle's force back into him and tapped his calf with his heel. Kyle collapsed to one knee, not from power, from timing. The room fell into silence. Jason stepped back. Kyle got up, but slower now, eyes darting. Breathing just a touch too fast. He started talking again, louder this time. Said Jason was lucky. Said they were just playing. But Jason, still silent, until now. He took off his black shirt and revealed a scar across his ribs. Faded, old, but unmistakably real. The kind of scar you don't get in movies. One of the recruits whispered, and another recognized him. Not as Jason Statham, but as the instructor who trained their instructor, years ago. Off book, no paperwork. Kyle's smirk was gone, because now he remembered the story. The whispered legend about a man who broke a Tier 1 squad in under 4 minutes using only body mechanics, and the phrase they used. He doesn't fight you, he unmakes you. Jason took one step closer to Kyle. The next move wouldn't be for show. For the first time in the session, Kyle Maddox didn't move. He stood opposite Jason, squared up, arms raised, but now they were raised out of protocol, not confidence. The cocky smirk had slipped from his face, and the tension in his shoulders wasn't just from muscle, it was from memory. Because something in Jason's silence had unlocked a flash of something long buried, a story, a warning. An old CO had once gathered them around after a disastrous joint exercise. An entire training squad dismantled in under 5 minutes by one man. They said it wasn't a test. It was a lesson. No cameras. No names. Just bruises and silence. The CO had called him Chisel. Not because he sculpted technique, because he broke it one strike at a time. Jason didn't change stance. He didn't need to. His presence did the fighting. Kyle tried to reset, rolled his neck, shook out his hands, shouted something vague about round two to keep the illusion of control alive. Then he charged. It wasn't an ego move, it was survival now. A last-ditch attempt to reclaim dominance before the crowd noticed it had already been lost. Jason absorbed the energy with perfect timing. Shifted his hip, slid past the incoming elbow, and with surgical precision struck the floating rib with his knuckle, not hard, just right. Kyle collapsed to one knee again, this time gasping. Not from pain, from confusion. His body had shut down for a split second. It didn't obey him. The trainees watching shifted uncomfortably. One of them lowered his phone. The show was over. This was now something else. Jason backed away. Kyle, red-faced and rattled, pushed himself up again. Blood flushed across his skin. He launched another attack, fast hook, fake kick, shoulder slam. Jason countered by stepping into the pressure. A brutal reversal that didn't just stop Kyle, it folded him. One moment Kyle was upright. The next he was on the mat, arms twisted under him, staring at Jason's boots. And Jason still hadn't spoken, not once, because this wasn't about words, it was about memory. And Kyle finally saw it. He remembered a mission brief years ago that referenced a mysterious British tactician, the kind that didn't wear rank, but got salutes anyway. A man who once cleared a full compound using environmental movement and hand-to-hand takedowns alone. Only one blurry photo ever surfaced, but the profile matched the man now standing over him. Kyle sat up slowly, his elbow hurt, his pride worse. The trainees didn't know whether to help or walk away. The air was thick, humid with confusion, and then Jason walked over. He crouched beside Kyle and finally spoke. Not loud, not angry, just 6 words. Kyle blinked, shocked, because those 6 words were the exact same ones the ghost from that compound mission had said to the insurgent leader. Seconds before breaking his spine in 4 calculated movements, Jason rose and walked away, leaving Kyle staring at the floor, not broken but unmade. And behind him, one of the younger recruits turned to another and whispered something he wasn't supposed to know. "He's the one from Kandar Outpost, isn't he?" The other didn't answer, because they all knew this wasn't Jason Statham, actor. This was Chisel, the myth who left before medals could find him. Back inside the gear room, Jason removed his wrap slowly. A senior officer, one who had stayed silent the whole time, stepped forward. He didn't ask for photos, didn't offer praise, he just nodded. And Jason nodded back, because respect doesn't need to be loud, especially when earned through control. Outside, Kyle finally stood. He didn't speak to his team. He just sat on the edge of the ring, hands open, breathing deep, because for the first time in years, he wasn't sure what kind of soldier he really was. The facility emptied slower than usual that night. No post-drill banter, no celebration, no locker room swagger. Most of the recruits packed up in silence, uncertain whether they had witnessed a fight or a lesson meant to last the rest of their careers. Kyle Maddox sat alone in the briefing room, a towel wrapped around his neck, hands pressed flat on the metal table. He wasn't injured, he wasn't winded, but something had shifted in him. The problem wasn't that Jason had beaten him. It was that Jason had done it without trying. Every strike, every turn, every movement had been precise, not brutal but educational. Like Kyle was the student in a class he didn't know he'd signed up for. On the table in front of him was a black file folder. No markings, no seals. It had been slid there by one of the senior officials just moments ago. Inside were 2 photographs. One, a blurry surveillance still from over 15 years ago. A man in tactical black, face obscured, dragging 3 unconscious hostiles out of a sand-blasted structure in the dark. The second photo, the same man, only clearer, older, standing over Kyle that afternoon, Jason Statham. Except the tag in the corner didn't say Jason. It said, Chisel status, decommissioned, non-public. The word non-public hit harder than the strikes, because it meant Jason had never been officially listed. He was off-grid, a ghost used when governments didn't want footprints, the kind of operator you don't find unless he lets you. And Kyle, he had mocked him like a clown in a ring. Meanwhile, Jason stood alone in the empty gym. He'd stayed behind, staring at the worn heavy bag hanging in the corner, the kind no one used anymore. It had a name written on it in faded ink. F. Delmore, Francis Delmore, Kyle's old mentor. Jason had trained beside him once, long ago, before any of this was on the books. Before medals and seals and cameras, Francis was the one who told Jason to disappear before the system used him up and spat him out. And now, Jason was watching the new generation lose their edge to ego. But not Kyle, not anymore. Jason heard the door creak behind him. He didn't turn. Kyle stood in the doorway, silent. No towel, no shirt, just himself. He said nothing, just approached slowly and dropped something on the bench, his SEAL qualification patch. The trident. Jason didn't look at it, but Kyle did. He didn't mean it as surrender. He meant it as a gesture. A thank you, because in a world where most men fear being broken, Kyle now feared being untrained. And Jason had reminded him what real control looked like. Jason finally spoke. "You're not weak." Kyle didn't reply. Jason added, "You just got loud before you got good." That landed. Kyle gave the smallest nod, the kind a warrior gives to a man who's now part of his origin story. Then he walked out, quietly. Weeks later, a training manual was distributed across a private channel used only by Tier 1 units and instructors. It didn't have a title. Just an icon, a chisel, carved into a steel ring. The first page read, "Strength is not power. Control is power. If you cannot end a fight without hatred, you're still in training." No one knew who wrote it, but instructors everywhere started calling it the Ghost Doctrine. And inside black site gyms, late at night, when young operators asked older ones how to prepare for real violence, they were told one thing: if you ever face the man who doesn't raise his hands, start walking away.